Hey guys, it's Charlene. Today I'm going to share 4 different ways to use your oval dies. I have here the Pumpkin Patch Outline Stamp Set. It has this lovely large pumpkin stamp as well as these great sentiments coordinating dies for those large sentiments, and then this layering stencil to color the pumpkins as well as a coordinating embossing folder. I'm starting with jet black dye ink, and I'm going to ink up this large outline stamp that has all of our pretty pumpkins. I'm stamping this onto an A2 sized piece of cardstock. Flip this over and press down evenly across the stamp. Lift up, looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and add a second stamping. Flip this over again and press and lift. Now I'm going to bring in those layering stencils. I'm starting here with stencil number 1, and I'm going to line this up over the top of my stamped image so that I can see the black outline all the way around. I'm starting this layer with some buttercream, but I'm going to avoid the tops of the pumpkins. So first I'll come in and do an all over color with the buttercream. Next, I'm going to bring in Warm Sunshine. This is the next darkest color in this family. I'll get a little bit of this sunshine on my brush and kind of go up from the center as well as around the edges of all of the pumpkins. That's going to help shade these very nicely. For the tops of these pumpkins, I'm bringing in the new Minty Mint color, which is this lovely light green. And I'll bring this on the tops of all of the pumpkins. Now I can take off stencil number 1, and I always love a good reveal. We're going to have lots of them. I'll put down stencil number 2, and since I still have the Minty Mint out, I'll start off with the tops of the pumpkins. Then I'll bring in the Warm Sunshine and get a decent amount here on my brush. You can see I like to use the lids of my ink pads to work the ink into my bristles, and I'm going to go across all the pumpkins. Then I can bring in the Caramel Toffee, which is darker, and this is what I'm going to use for my shading. Again, going around the edges of the pumpkins as well as starting from the center and going just outside. Now we can lift up stencil number 2, and it's so cool. I love the different patterns that you get with these stencils. Bringing in number 3, I'll start off here with Sweet Leaf, and that goes with that Minty Mint. It's that next darker shade in the family. And I'll bring this over the tops of these pumpkins. And also these little spots that are at the bottom of some of the pumpkins, I'm going to hit those with this color as well. These pumpkins are going to be somewhat non-traditional. I'm making them pink. I'm going to start out here with the rose quartz and take it over the tops of all of the pumpkins. I am going to avoid this detail layer here as well as this detail layer there because that one was already yellow. Then once I'm done with the rose quartz, I can come in with this next darkest shade, which is Puffy Heart, and we will do the same thing. I'm going to get a little bit on my brush, and then I'm going to go around the edges of the pumpkins and also along that center area of the pumpkin. Stencil number 3 is done, so I'll go ahead and peel this off. You can see the yellows and oranges and pinks are starting to go together really well. Brought in stencil number 4. I'm going to start with Sweet Leaf. I'm going to color the tops and the bottoms of the pumpkins here. And for this layer, I'll start with the Puffy Heart, which is that darker pink, and again going all over the parts of the pumpkins. Once I've done that, then we will come in with an even darker color of this trio, which is Purple Wine. It's a very beautiful color. I'm not going to use a lot of it, but I am going to take some around those edges again and out from the center in order to shade our nice pink pumpkins, and that will finish up layer number 4. You can see those pumpkins starting to take shape. 5 and 6 are going to color the remainders of these pumpkins. I'll start here by coloring in this little top with what's left on my brush here of the green, and now I'll bring some more new colors in. These are Sun-Kissed and Orange Cream, really pretty set of oranges that Altenew just came out with. I did an all over with the Sunkissed, and now I'm going to bring in the orange cream, which is the next darkest color, and I'll repeat that process of going around the edges as well as the center. Now we can move on to layer number 6 of this stencil. I'll start here with the orange cream, doing a whole layer of it here on these pumpkins. And the next darkest color is Autumn Blaze. This is such a perfect set of inks for the fall because it has all of these beautiful oranges and they work really well together. Now we can take off layer number 6, and there are our beautiful colored pumpkins. Now, since I still have my stamp here on my top plate and my paper hasn't moved, I get to use a really cool advantage of the Stampwheel, which is you can re-stamp your outline stamp. So I'm bringing back in that jet black fresh dye ink, and this is going to help that outline darken back up again and be really bold. Sometimes when you are working different colors of inks over a black outline, it can kind of dull it down just a little bit. So this, oh, see, look, really vibrant. Again, love these pumpkins, all the layers of colors, they look gorgeous. Here is that coordinating embossing folder, and the fun thing about having a coordinating embossing folder is really you just line up the image through the top portion of the embossing folder and get it so those outlines match up just like this, and then run it through your die cutting machine, whatever your settings are for your particular machine, and you get a really cool result. So we'll open this back up and we have all of the beautiful texture from the embossing folder coupled with all of our fun colors from the layering stencil, and it just makes our pumpkins look even more real. I have here some of the new cardstock that Altenew is coming out with. This is Frosty Pink, and I am going to show you the first way to use an oval die. I know it took a while to get here, but I am centering my oval die and I am going to cut it out of an A2 sized piece of this Frosty Pink cardstock. And what I like to do, I use these document sleeves to hold my paper. Any scraps that I have left, I always put them right in the front of the pocket. So that way when I need a small piece or another A2 size piece, I can just grab them out of the front of that, no problem. I'm using this So Sweet stamp from the outline stamp set, and I'm going to heat emboss this. So I'm putting down some anti-static powder tool, and then I'll start by stamping with some clear embossing ink. I am going to stamp that several times because these letters are kind of thick, and then I'm going to show you a trick here when you're working with thicker letters. I'm coming in here with caramel toffee. So the ink's going to be nice and sticky from our clear embossing ink, but because we added that caramel toffee, if there's any spots where maybe the embossing powder is not thick enough or doesn't hit quite right on those letters, it's not going to be noticeable because that caramel toffee color is going to be showing through. So I'll melt this with my heat gun and look at that beautiful shine. Cut this out with the coordinating die, and I'm also going to cut out a few pieces from this piece of coral berry. Now to put our card together, we'll start with a double-sided adhesive sheet, and I'm going to peel this apart. Then I can add it to the back of our stenciled and embossed panel. And what this is going to help do is it's going to help our panel to lay nicely on the top of our card base, but we don't have to worry about any glue kind of messing things up or pushing things down. I've put my card base here in my scoring tool, and then I can drop our card panel right over the top. This is going to help it to line up perfectly, no issues. I added foam tape to the back of our beautiful frame that we created with our die cut oval, and I'm just lining that up right around the edges of the card. Now our eye is drawn to the area of the card where all the action is, all of that beautiful color layering and embossing on our pumpkins. For our sentiment there, you saw I did 3 die cuts of coral berry and I layered them up. And then I'm taking our main stamped sentiment piece here and I'm going to slightly offset this so that the coral berry sticks out from the bottom. Because this is a darker pink, it's going to look really nice up next to the lighter frosty pink and just add another fun little detail to our card. So I'll get my sentiment down here towards the bottom right hand corner, and I've brought in some gold baubles. This will play off of our embossing powder and make everything feel more cohesive. So here's our finished card with that lovely embossing, our shiny sentiment, our gold baubles, all the good stuff. So pretty. My next card, I'm going to use the Fairyland Florals coloring stencil set along with the coordinating embossing folder. We're going to do a similar thing with the oval die, but it's going to be the opposite, and you'll see what a difference that makes. So first I put down stencil layer number 1, and I'm going to bring in the new Iceberg Fresh Dye ink. This is a very pretty light blue. And then I'm going to come in with some Eastern Sky, which is the next darkest color. I'm going to take this and tap off, and then I'm going to blend out from the center of what each of the flowers will ultimately be. Take off the first stencil layer, put down number 2, and I'm doing a similar thing to what I did for our first card. I'm working towards darker colors. So I'll start here with Eastern Sky, do it all over, and then I bring in that next darkest color, which is the ultramarine, and I'm going to go from the center of these petals here and bring it out as well. So that way our florals are going to be shaded towards the middle, and that will be a lot more noticeable once we take this stencil off. Now we can take off this stencil and bring in layer number 3. I'm going to be working with oranges for the centers of my florals because blue and orange are complementary colors. They're going to look really nice together on a card. So I've brought in here some orange cream, such a gorgeous orange, and I'm just being careful not to get the leaf portion. For the centers on the larger florals, I'm going to bring in the next darkest color, which is Autumn Blaze, and I'm going to carefully wipe off my stencil before I go onto the leaves. I don't want to get any of that orange ink into my leaves. Starting here with this sweet leaf, I'm going to bring this all over the stem and the leaves. Just again, being careful of those floral centers there. This is why having a smaller blending brush works really well. Then I'll bring in Just Green, which is the next darkest color, and I'm going to use this to shade the bottoms of the stems coming up towards the bottoms of the leaves. So those are going to look darker. I also hit the tips of the leaves. So we'll take off that stencil and bring in stencil number 4. This is going to color the other leaves that we had. So bringing in the Just Green, I'm going to color all over. For our shading, we'll get the even darker color, which is Hunter Green. Same thing, I'm going to bring it kind of on the tops of the leaves and on the underside of the leaves as well as towards the base. For the very center of the 2 large florals, we're going to bring in Fire Brick, which is the next darkest color off after Autumn Blaze. So we'll get that there in the center of our florals. Now we can lift up layer number 4. I'm using a slightly smaller oval than I did for the first card, and now you'll see what I mean by this being the opposite. On the first card, we cut a piece of colored cardstock and used that as our frame. For this card, we're actually cutting the piece that is going to be our colored and detailed image. So now I can run the beautiful frame that we created through on our embossing folder, getting all of that beautiful detail. And I'm going to do something really fun. This is going to tie everything together. So in the first one, remember, it was just a plain outer frame and we had all of the beautiful detail in the center. Well, in this one, what I'm doing is I've taken a piece of Caribbean Sky cardstock, lined it up exactly with where our other piece was in the embossing folder. And now I'm going to run the Caribbean sky piece through our die cutting machine to apply that pressure. And those inside floral details now are going to line up perfectly with those outer floral details. It's going to flow seamlessly here, and it ties the inside of the oval to our outer frame we created. I went ahead off camera and stamped and die cut a sentiment to go with this, and I used a few little strips here of the double-sided adhesive, put those around the frame. It very easily lined up right on top, and I've added some foam tape to the back of our sentiment to pop this up in the center of the card. No cards finished without some bling, so I'm going to add some once I get this card panel glued down to our card base. And you just want to go corner to corner. It's really easy, especially if you're using liquid adhesive. So here's these nice iridescent and clear pieces of confetti, and that finishes off our second card. I think I like this one even better than the first one. I don't know. It's a toss-up. For our next card, we're going to be doing some wild ink blending, you guys. We're going to do our lovely orange family here, and I've brought in a pink family to go with it. And we're going to go every other color on the diagonal all the way across the piece of an A2 size piece of cardstock. So we've got 8 colors of ink here, and we're going to make 8 diagonal lines all the way across our piece of cardstock. So I'm doing these about 1 inch wide. I started there with Frosty Pink, and now I'm going to bring in Sunkissed. So I used the lightest pink, and now I'm using the lightest orange. Next, I'll bring in Coral Berry. After that, I'll bring in Orange Cream, and then Ruby Red, followed by Autumn Blaze, followed by Grapevine, followed by Firebrick. So now we have from light to dark, but going pink, orange, pink, orange, pink, orange, pink, orange, all the way across. I'm going to wipe off my brushes and start the whole process over again in order to bring in a second layer of ink. And you can see I built up that ink, and once this dries, it's going to look gorgeous. It's a little bit more difficult with these thin of lines to ink blend everything really well, but we don't have to worry about that at all because we're bringing in the Zero Waste Autumn Leaves die, which is new and awesome because it's going to cut out all of these beautiful leaves and little stick pieces and dots, and you get to make 2 cards using this. It's such an innovative type of die. So I'm centering this here on our ink blended panel. I'll run it through the die cutting machine. And I'm going to go ahead and pop out all of the pieces because I want to keep them essentially in the same place that they were before I took them out of the paper. Hopefully that makes sense as you're watching it there. See, I've got everything generally in the same location. So we're going to be able to use those pieces as well as this piece here where everything's cut from. I have here the Pretty Pumpkins layering die set, and it's going to create these 3 beautiful layered pumpkins. I've cut everything out from white cardstock following the really easy assembly guide on the back of the packaging here. I'm going to layer up all of these pumpkins. So you just add some liquid glue to the back of each layer and layer them up. So we've got our 3 pumpkins. And then I'll take this piece here that we had and I am going to turn it over upside down. Now you may be wondering what in the world I'm doing here, but this makes it so I can easily glue all of these leaves on the front of an A2 size piece of cardstock. I did not push them down in the holes. I just gently place them, and then I'm going to go along and add glue before I lay this piece of A2 size cardstock over the back. So now all of that glue is going to stick to our white cardstock. I can flip this over and very easily pull off the top piece, right? Because I'm not having to push those die cuts through. I had this one little guy escape, so I'll fix him. And now I can show you the two other ways to use your oval dies. So first I'm going to cut out a solid piece here from the beautiful brushed gold metallic cardstock. And this is going to go in the center of our piece so that our pumpkins can be showcased on the center of this card. The second way you can use them is to create a frame. This also helps to create a showcase on the center of your card, and it makes it so that you can create a wreath. So you'll be able to see that here shortly. Before I move on, I did decide I wanted to just here and there put a couple of those dots from the die cut. And then off camera, I cut a full sheet of the gold, again with that die, as well as white cardstock. So I have a bunch of extra leaves here. I've got a white A2 size piece of cardstock. I'm going to bring in a sheet of double-sided adhesive. We'll get that laid down on the back, and then I can just very easily lay my ink blended piece over the top, and now I can pop all of these white leaves in. I'm just doing the leaves. I'm not doing any of the tiny pieces, the branches or the dots with the white. I'm just doing the leaves. And those go in fairly easily because they are large. Didn't take me very long at all to figure out which piece needed to go where. Now, because the dots stuck into the foiled cardstock, it's super easy to do this with the foiled cardstock because I was able to just lay the whole piece over the top and then use the wax side of my new pokey tool from Altenew and pop those through without messing up the gold foiled cardstock. To make sure everything adheres nice and well, I flip the piece over and then I'm running my bone folder along the back of it. That'll ensure that all those pieces are secure. For our wreath that we're going to create with our frame that we cut out from the gold cardstock, this is super easy to do. All I'm doing is I'm taking some of those gold leaves and I'm just gluing them in different places along the frame. I'm going to do it towards the bottom left, you can see, and the top right. Now here's a trick to help you line things up on the center of your card. If you have a piece of acetate that has grid lines on it like this, center whatever it is that you're trying to line up on the piece of acetate. So I'm going to center this oval right in the center of the piece of acetate. And then I can just take a piece of low-tack tape and put it on there to hold it in place on top of the acetate. Then I can add my glue and I can bring in whatever I'm trying to attach that to and lay it over the back of it, flip it all over, and then just gently remove that piece of tape. So now our pretty frame we created is perfectly centered, and I can go back now and add and tuck in and kind of mess around with the leaves until I'm content. I ended up adding a lot more. To finish off this card, we need to add a sentiment. So I'm using the new One Go solid sentiment strips, and this is a press plate. So this is fun because you can do it with ink or you can do it with foil using your BetterPress or your Glimmer. So I'm going to put my plate here. Then once I have run that through, I can use the coordinating dies to cut out all of these sentiments at the same time. I'm going to use a piece of watercolor paper here because that's going to give us a better impression with the press plate. So I've inked this up with some pigment ink, and then I can run this through my die cutting machine, and then it's going to get impressed into the paper. It's such a pretty look when you are using these BetterPress plates, and I just love them. So now I can take this off. You see that nice solid coverage we got there, and I'll bring in the coordinating die and run that through my die cutting machine just like you would any regular die, and it's going to cut out all of these sentiment strips at once. Any that I choose not to use, I just stick them in the packaging in my storage sleeve with my die and my press plate so that I have them in the future. I started out here, you'll see it changes, but I started out here with the Sending Big Hugs sentiment, and I'm going to glue this right over the top of our foiled leaves. And then I can move on here to our second card. I'm kind of going back and forth between these cards because I had everything out on my desk at once. I'm going to use this same trick that I did for that other card by taking the piece of acetate, and I'm going to tape my oval in place so it doesn't move on me. I've got my foam tape there, and then I can just lay my A2 piece of cardstock over the acetate, and it's going to give me a perfectly centered oval. I can't tell you how many times I have messed up the placement of an oval when I'm not using that trick. So I definitely recommend trying it out. I went ahead and arranged my pumpkins how I thought they would look nice on the front of the card. Used a little bit of foam tape there on a sentiment, and now I'm bringing in some foam tape and tucking it in here and there behind the leaves to add some extra dimension. Now remember I told you about the sentiment? Well, I thought I was going to be clever and try and go around the edges to make them black while I had it on my card. And of course, I messed up the sentiment because that's card making. That's what happens. So this is why when you're going to color around the edges of a sentiment strip, you always should have the back of the sentiment strip facing you. Then if your marker goes off the edge, it's going to mark up the back of your piece, not the front. So all fixed, and here we have our two finished cards. This beautiful one where we use the oval to create our stage for our pumpkins. Our eyes are now drawn towards the center there, and you could do that with a piece of colored cardstock as well. And then this one where we used our oval dies to create that nice frame and create a nice little wreath with those leaves on the top and the bottom. Very pretty. All right, guys, I wanted to mention this is part of the October 2024 release video hop for Altenew. So there is a giveaway involved. Be sure to check down in the description for all of the details with the giveaway because it is awesome. All right, I hope you picked up some tips and tricks today. Please be sure to like and subscribe as well as hit that notification bell so that I can continue to bring you more crafty content in the future. Until next time, happy crafting.